Airplanes have an unspoken rule: once you find your seat, you claim it quickly and quietly, because hesitation invites chaos. I boarded early, slid my backpack under the seat in front of me, and settled into my aisle seat with a deep sigh of relief. It was a full flight, the kind where every overhead bin mattered and every inch of legroom felt negotiable. That's when I noticed her. She stood halfway down the aisle, blocking traffic with the confidence of someone who believed rules were optional. She looked to be in her late 40s, with carefully styled blonde hair and oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She wore a fitted white sweater, black leggings, and pristine beige ankle boots, an outfit that said comfortable, but important. Draped over one arm was a large designer-looking tote, and slung over the other shoulder was a puffy coat. She wasn't just standing there. She was claiming territory. 2 seats. Both economy. Side by side. She placed her tote in the window seat, her coat sprawled dramatically across the middle seat, and stood protectively in the aisle seat, arms crossed as if guarding a royal throne. People behind her began to pile up, shuffling awkwardly with bags and rolling suitcases. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else muttered under their breath. Finally, a man in his early 30s, holding a boarding pass and a small carry-on, stopped beside her. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I think that's my seat." Karen didn't even look at him. "These seats are taken," she said flatly. The man blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" She turned just enough to glance at him over her shoulder. "I said they're taken. I need the space." The man held up his boarding pass. "I'm assigned to the middle seat." Karen scoffed. "Not anymore." A few heads turned. I leaned slightly into the aisle, suddenly very interested. The man tried again. "Ma'am, this flight is full. I need to sit there." Karen sighed dramatically, as if he were the inconvenience. "Look, I get very uncomfortable sitting next to people. I paid for this flight just like everyone else, and I deserve to be comfortable." He hesitated. "Did you buy 2 seats?" Karen laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Don't be ridiculous. So, you're just taking it?" She shrugged. "Yes." Behind him, the line grew longer. A woman with a stroller was stuck. A businessman checked his watch. The air felt heavier by the second. "I'm going to get a flight attendant," the man said. Karen rolled her eyes. "Go ahead. They already know." That, as it turned out, was not true. A few minutes later, a flight attendant approached, mid-30s, dark hair neatly pulled back, navy uniform crisp and unwrinkled. Her name badge read Maya. "Hello," Maya said warmly, though her eyes were already assessing the situation. "Is there a seating issue?" "Yes," the man said quickly. "She's refusing to let me sit in my assigned seat." Karen cut in immediately. "I need both seats. I get anxious when people sit too close." Maya nodded slowly. "I understand. Did you purchase 2 seats?" Karen's jaw tightened. "No." "Then I'll need you to clear the middle seat so this passenger can sit." Karen's expression shifted, from confidence to disbelief. "Absolutely not," she said. "You can't force me to sit next to someone." Maya remained calm. "On a full flight, yes, ma'am, you will be seated next to other passengers." Karen folded her arms. "That's unacceptable." Maya gestured gently to the aisle. "Please remove your belongings from the seat." Karen leaned down and hugged her coat closer. "No." The man exhaled sharply, stepping back to let other passengers pass while this unfolded. "I'll wait," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. Karen smirked. "Good." Maya straightened, her tone firming slightly. "Ma'am, if you require 2 seats for personal comfort, you must purchase 2 seats." Karen snapped. That's discrimination. No, Maya replied evenly. That's policy. Karen glanced around, noticing the growing audience. Her voice rose. So now you're embarrassing me in front of everyone? I'm trying to seat everyone properly, Maya said. Karen scoffed loudly. This airline is unbelievable. She grabbed her tote and shoved it deeper into the window seat, as if daring anyone to challenge her. Maya didn't flinch. Ma'am, she said calmly, I'm going to ask you one more time to clear the seat. Karen looked her dead in the eye. Make me. The cabin went quiet. And in that moment, it was clear this wasn't about comfort. It was about control. And something told me Karen wasn't about to give it up easily. The silence that followed Karen's challenge felt heavier than the plane itself. Passengers who had been half listening now watched openly, bags resting at their feet, eyes darting between Karen and the flight attendant. The aisle was still blocked, boarding paused, and the air felt tight with collective impatience. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't sigh. She simply nodded once, like someone who had reached the end of polite conversation. Ma'am, she said calmly, if you refuse to follow seating policy, you'll need to involve the lead flight attendant. Karen scoffed. Oh please. Go get whoever you want. The man waiting for his seat shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable being the center of the dispute. I really just want to sit down, he said, trying one last time. Karen didn't even look at him. You can wait. Maya gestured for him to step aside. Sir, thank you for your patience. Please stand just here. She walked toward the front of the cabin, heels quiet against the carpet. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Is she serious? Someone whispered. People like that always think they can get away with it, another muttered. A few minutes later, Maya returned with the lead flight attendant, a woman in her early 40s with a composed expression and the kind of presence that radiated authority without effort. Her name badge read Elena. Elena surveyed the scene, Karen guarding 2 seats, the man waiting nearby, the stalled aisle. Ma'am, Elena said evenly, what seems to be the issue? Karen straightened, clearly pleased to have a new audience. I need space. I'm not comfortable sitting next to strangers. Elena nodded. I understand. Did you purchase 2 seats? Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. No. Then you're only entitled to 1. Karen's voice rose. I paid for my ticket. So did everyone else, Elena replied. Karen laughed bitterly. This is ridiculous. You're telling me I have no choice. Elena's tone remained calm. You have choices. You may take your assigned seat, or if you need additional space, we can rebook you on a later flight with 2 seats purchased. Karen's eyes widened. You're threatening to throw me off the plane? No, Elena said. I'm explaining your options. The crowd around them listened closely. No one spoke. Karen crossed her arms. I'm not moving. Elena nodded once. All right. She turned to Maya. Please pause boarding. A collective groan rippled through the cabin. Karen's confidence wavered for a split second, but she recovered quickly. Good. Maybe people will finally see how unfair this is. Elena leaned slightly closer. Ma'am, boarding cannot continue until you comply. Karen rolled her eyes. Not my problem. Elena straightened and spoke clearly so the surrounding rows could hear. This flight is fully booked. There are no extra seats. If you do not clear the seat, you will delay everyone. Karen looked around, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes on her. Why are you all staring at me? She snapped. I have anxiety. A woman nearby spoke up. So do I. And I still paid for 1 seat. Murmurs of agreement followed. Karen glared. Mind your business. Elena raised a hand gently. Ma'am, yelling will not help. Karen's face flushed red. You people are unbelievable. She picked up her coat, then hesitated. For a moment, it looked like she might finally give in. Then she dropped it back onto the seat. No, she said firmly. I'm staying. Elena nodded again, this time more seriously. Very well. She turned and walked toward the cockpit. The cabin buzzed with anticipation. The man who was supposed to sit in the middle seat leaned toward me. I just wanted to get home, he muttered. Same, I said quietly. A minute later, Elena returned, but she wasn't alone. And that's when Karen realized she might have pushed things too far. When Elena returned to the cabin, she wasn't alone. Behind her walked a uniformed airline supervisor, tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm but unmistakably serious expression. His name badge read Marcus, and he carried himself like someone who had dealt with difficult passengers more times than he could count. The chatter in the cabin dropped instantly. Karen noticed him too. Her posture stiffened, but she lifted her chin as if daring him to challenge her. Elena gestured toward the seats. This passenger is refusing to clear the middle seat. Marcus looked at Karen, then at the coat and tote still occupying the space. Ma'am, he said, his voice low and firm, is that correct? Yes, Karen snapped. And I've explained why. Marcus nodded once. Let me be clear. You are entitled to one seat. That is the policy. Karen huffed. I don't care about your policy. Marcus' tone didn't change. You will either sit in your assigned seat, or you will deplane. Karen laughed sharply. You're not serious. I am, Marcus said. The aisle felt impossibly narrow. People leaned into their seats, phones discreetly lowered, all waiting. Karen gestured wildly. This is harassment. I have a right to personal space. Marcus met her gaze. Not at the expense of another passenger's paid seat. She turned to the man who'd been waiting. Can't you just move somewhere else? He shook his head. There is nowhere else. Karen scoffed. Unbelievable. Marcus held up a hand. This is your final warning. For the first time, Karen hesitated. Her eyes darted around the cabin, at the people watching, at the blocked aisle, at the unmoving supervisor. The confidence that had carried her this far started to crack. I'm not moving, she said again, but her voice lacked its earlier edge. Marcus nodded slowly. Very well. He turned to Elena. Please contact ground security. Karen's face drained of color. You can't do that. She snapped. This is insane. You've been given multiple chances, Marcus replied. Elena stepped away to make the call. Karen stood abruptly, nearly knocking into the aisle seat. You're ruining my day. You're delaying an entire flight, Marcus said. She grabbed her tote, clutching it like a shield. I'll sue this airline. Marcus didn't respond. The second stretched. Boarding was completely halted now. Somewhere near the back, a child began to cry. Karen's breathing quickened. This is discrimination, she repeated, louder than before. A passenger across the aisle spoke up. You could have avoided all of this by just sitting down. Karen whipped her head around. Stay out of it. Marcus raised his voice slightly, not loud, but authoritative. Ma'am, please lower your voice. Karen's composure finally shattered. This is outrageous. She shouted. You're all ganging up on me. At that moment, 2 airport security officers appeared at the front of the cabin. The mood shifted instantly. Karen froze. Marcus stepped aside to let them approach. This passenger is refusing to comply with crew instructions. One officer, a woman with her hair pulled back tightly, addressed Karen directly. Ma'am, you need to gather your belongings. Karen stared at her. You're serious? Yes, the officer said calmly. Karen's eyes flicked to the coat still on the seat. Slowly, reluctantly, she picked it up. The man with the boarding pass stepped forward, hopeful but cautious. Karen turned on him. I hope you're happy. He said nothing. As the officers escorted her toward the front of the plane, the cabin remained silent, until she reached the exit. This airline is terrible. She shouted over her shoulder. You've lost a customer forever. The door closed behind her. A collective exhale filled the cabin. Maya immediately moved forward. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Boarding will resume shortly. The man finally took his seat, looking exhausted. Sorry about all that, he said to no one in particular. A woman nearby smiled. Not your fault. I glanced at the now empty middle seat, perfectly ordinary, perfectly unclaimed. All that drama over something so simple. As boarding resumed, I couldn't help but wonder how Karen was reacting out there in the terminal, and whether she realized yet that her attempt to take more than she paid for had cost her the entire flight. Once Karen was escorted off the plane, the atmosphere shifted instantly. It was as if a storm had passed, leaving behind quiet relief and a shared sense of disbelief. People settled into their seats, overhead bins clicked shut, and the flight attendants moved with renewed efficiency. The man in the middle seat let out a long breath. I thought that was never going to end. Maya offered him a sympathetic smile as she walked past. Thank you for your patience. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, a ripple of soft applause traveled through the cabin. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a few scattered claps that quickly died down, but it carried a clear message. The tension was gone. I looked out the window as the terminal slid away. Somewhere inside that massive building, Karen was probably still arguing, still insisting she'd been wronged. But here in the cabin, the rules had been restored, and life moved on. About 15 minutes into the flight, Elena made her way down the aisle, stopping briefly at the row where the incident had occurred. Sir, she said to the man, would like to apologize for the disruption. If you'd like, we can offer you a drink voucher. He smiled tiredly. I'd appreciate that. Elena then glanced at the rest of us in the row. And thank you all for your patience. Once she moved on, the man turned slightly toward me. I've never seen anything like that. Me neither, I replied. I don't know how they stay so calm. He laughed quietly. I'd have lost it. The flight leveled out, the seatbelt sign chimed off, and normalcy returned. People opened laptops, flipped through magazines, and reached for headphones. The chaos from boarding already felt strangely distant. Halfway through the flight, Maya passed by again. You okay now? She asked the man kindly. Much better, he said. Thanks for handling that. She smiled. It's part of the job. A few rows back, someone whispered, imagine thinking you can just take 2 seats. Another voice replied, some people really believe rules don't apply to them. I thought about Karen's certainty, how she'd stood there, arms crossed, completely convinced she'd win. She hadn't screamed at first. She hadn't threatened. She'd simply assumed. That assumption had been her downfall. When we landed, the man stood to retrieve his bag. He hesitated, then turned to me. Well, we survived. Barely, I joked. As we walked down the jet bridge, I spotted Karen in the distance through the terminal window. She stood near a customer service desk, arms flailing, face tight with anger. An employee listened patiently, nodding, clearly unmoved. The man noticed her too. Still going, he said. Some lessons take longer, I replied. We parted ways in the terminal, each heading toward our own exit. The rest of my journey was uneventful, but that moment stayed with me. Because it wasn't really about seats. It was about entitlement, and what happens when it finally meets a boundary. On that flight, Karen learned something she clearly hadn't before: comfort isn't something you can steal, and rules don't bend just because you demand they do. One ticket. One seat. That's how it works, for everyone.